Welcome to the CGA-IGC podcast series, brought to you by the CGA-IGC Education Committee and made possible through the generous support of our sponsor, LS Cancer Diag. Each episode aims to bring you an in-depth discussion related to emerging data, clinical challenges, and unique perspectives in the world of hereditary GI cancers. Before we start, we'd like to remind you that the content of this podcast is not intended to replace professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, and the content reflects expert opinion at the time of recording. Keep listening to find out more about this episode's host, guest, and feature topic, and be sure to learn more about our sponsor at lscancerdiag.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to CGA Mentoring Podcast. I am Veroushka Ballester, a gastroenterologist at the University of Puerto Rico Comprehensive Cancer Center. And today we have with us Dr. Elena Stoffel and Dr. Jennifer Maratt. Dr. Elena Stoffel is an associate professor of internal medicine at the University of Michigan, assistant director of cancer disparities outreach, and director of the Cancer Genetics Clinic at the Rodgel Cancer Center. She earned her MD at Harvard Medical School and a master's in public health at the Harvard School of Public Health. She completed training in internal medicine and gastroenterology at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. Her clinical and research work focused on cancer early detection and prevention and care of families with hereditary cancer syndrome, and her multidisciplinary research collaborations span genetic epidemiology, early detection, and chemoprevention of gastrointestinal cancers. Dr. Jennifer Maratt is an assistant professor at Indiana University School of Medicine. She completed her medicine degree at Rush Medical College, followed by internal medicine residency and gastroenterology fellowship at the University of Michigan. During her fellowship at Michigan, she received her master's in health and healthcare research. She has a clinical and research interest in colorectal cancer prevention, including optimizing access to and uptake of colorectal cancer screening and surveillance. She started her career at University of Michigan, where she was mentored by Dr. Stoffel as she developed her clinical focus in caring for patients with hereditary colorectal cancer syndromes. After a couple of years at Michigan, she relocated to the Indianapolis area, where she joined the Indiana University faculty. Thank you both. Looking forward to this great conversation. And I think I'll just start off with something simple, like how you met and how you knew that this was going to be a relationship that could last and be successful.
Thank you, Veroushka. I can start there. And thank you for having us on this podcast. I hope this is helpful for everyone that's listening. Elena and I go back years. I think we backtracked and realized we'd met, when I was interviewing for fellowship, actually. So that was 10 years ago now. And I really got to know Elena. I recall when I was on service with her during one of my years in fellowship and started working with her more as faculty at University of Michigan. And, I had always kind of heard along my training routes, this was even predating fellowship and residency, that you find folks that you work with, faculty that you work with, who have careers that you'd like to emulate, that you sort of gravitate towards. And I found Elena to be very approachable. I thought she was, had a really good rapport with patients, but also her colleagues. And when we started working together more, and the opportunity arose to work with her more in the hereditary colorectal cancer syndromes clinic at Michigan, I was very eager to work with her and excited at the opportunity because it was an area that I really felt passionate about. And the relationship has grown since then. As you mentioned, Veroushka, a couple of years into my early career years at Michigan, I relocated to the Indianapolis area. And it was a decision that was tough because it was so early in my career, and I hadn't planned, or I didn't foresee that happening until it started to happen. It was for family reasons we relocated, and Elena really helped transition and think about getting out of my comfort zone. I had known Michigan, felt very comfortable with faculty there, how things worked from a clinical side, from a research side, and she really helped sort of think outside of the Ann Arbor area. And you realize medicine and really the GI community is not that large. I mean, she's worked with many of my mentors here in Indiana, and it's been really nice to be able to have someone that can guide you as you transition to a new institution, especially. So I'll pause there, and Elena, hear what you have to say as well.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Jenny, for your kind words. And I wanted to send it right back at you that in academic medicine, what we look for is we look for the next generation, the excited future leaders. And whenever we come across individuals who are excited about what we do in our field, it basically inspires us to be better. And I think that, in working with you and your interest and your really insightful questions helps us as a field do a better job taking care of patients. And I think that whenever, as a mentor, whenever you have a trainee or someone junior who is interested in what you do, it fuels the fire and makes you think about what more could be done than is already being done now. And I think that working with you while you were here at University of Michigan was really fantastic because we worked basically side by side in clinic. Mm-hmm. But I think since your move to Indiana, it's almost gotten even more exciting because what we are doing as a smaller group kind of gets the opportunity to get disseminated more broadly. And certainly I think that in our field of cancer prevention and prevention of gastrointestinal cancers, there have been only a few of us in this space. And I think it's really exciting that the space is getting bigger, that there are more opportunities to do clinical chemoprevention studies, and certainly more people who are excited in doing this work helps bring the benefit to more of our patients and move the field forward. So I think it's been wonderfully exciting to be able to see your growth and development professionally. And as I said, it's super exciting to see the wonderful things that you're doing at Indiana.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. And I agree. We, as mentees, we typically try to gravitate towards people that we want to emulate and are great leaders, are approachable. So I think definitely those characteristics are what we look for. In terms of any recommendations in terms of how to foster a positive mentorship relationship, could you comment on that a little bit for our listeners?
I can start with that. So I think it's important for mentors and mentees to realize that this is a relationship that can be mutually beneficial, but it also requires investment from both sides. And I think that for a mentor can be really busy doing a lot of different things, and taking on a mentee is a big responsibility. And certainly on that end, the mentor has to be excited to work with the mentee. But on the flip side, the mentee also needs to realize that the mentor has a lot of other things going on too. And so if the mentor is not responsive to an email that might get missed, to realize that this is not a slight, but rather that it may just be an oversight that could be remedied through additional discussion. And I think that the bottom line is that communication is so important, because if you're the mentee and you send a message to your mentor and the message doesn't get answered and you say, well, gee, she doesn't want to work with me, that may not be the case. It just may be that it was a particularly busy day. And by the flip side, if the mentor is actually asking the mentee if there is something that they want to put together for an upcoming meeting, the mentor also kind of relies on the mentee to kind of take the ball and run with it and to come back for advice, and not to come back the night before the abstract is due and say, can you read it over before I turn it in? So I do think that communication is really important, and actually being able to have a discussion up front about what you're hoping to be able to get from the relationship is great, because that way, if either party is not aligned with what you're expecting, you have the opportunity to sort it out.
Yeah, I'd agree with all those points, Elena. I think communication is really key, and setting expectations from both parties, both from a mentor and mentee standpoint, because I think some mentor-mentee relationships may be just for a short duration, for just the duration of the training period. Not that you won't keep in touch afterwards. You most likely will if it was a good, positive relationship. But I think also just reaching out. I think, Elena, you and I think back and I'm like, it was not structured in that we had set meeting times, when we were working together, but we saw each other regularly in the clinical setting, which really helped, because then we also worked together collaborating on manuscripts, for example, and thinking of other ideas, and career paths just sort of evolved after that. But it was the regular communication and the regular interaction that I think really helped really build that relationship. And that's why when I moved away, I was thinking, like we've spent all this time together building relationships, but what will happen now? And I think you're absolutely correct in that the relationship is even stronger now. And we have more that we're collaborating on as a result of that regular and frequent contact and communication. So definitely agree with that.
I agree with what you're saying. I definitely think that communication and mutual understanding are key in a mentor-mentee relationship. And I think it's important to set goals and expectations from the start and make sure that you follow up on those. And Elena, I definitely like what you mentioned about the importance that both sides are invested in this relationship. So I think that that is key for a successful relationship. I would like to now switch a little bit gears here, and I would like you to comment on something that I feel is very important in terms of stating the difference between mentorship and sponsorship and how both of them may differentiate and how both of them are actually important for advancing your career.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had gone back at Michigan. There was a women's leadership conference I remember I attended, and it was the first time that I had really heard the difference. And I don't think I had recognized it through the majority of my training that there was a difference. But I've realized it now in hindsight and moving forward. I see sponsorship and mentorship. Sometimes they can overlap. It can be the same person, but sometimes it's not necessarily the same person. It may not be the person that you're meeting with frequently from a clinical or research perspective and getting mentorship or guidance in that regard, but it may be somebody that, or sponsor would be somebody, that hears about an opportunity and thinks of you, as a junior to say, hey, this is something that, a value worthwhile for you to do. That's how I have sort of learned to define the two roles. And like I said, sometimes it's the same person and sometimes it's not. So Elena, I don't know if you've had a different perspective as a mentor or sponsor.
I completely agree with you. I think that you can be both a mentor and a sponsor, but in general, I tend to think of a mentor as somebody who is not quite a parent, but also kind of overseeing and kind of taking responsibility for you, whereas a sponsor is actually trying to launch you and give you the opportunities to go off on your own and thrive. And I think that in terms of sponsorship, the key is exactly as you said, to keep in mind, what can I do to actually help this person's career move forward? What can I do to pay it forward? People have given me opportunities. What can I do to give you the opportunities that I've had in the past? And I think that that's really important. And I think, as you said, I think the mentor-mentee relationship, there is kind of a close bond there. But I think the sponsorship opportunity can actually go much more broadly because it can be somebody that I met once at a meeting and was very impressed by, and I can put that person up forward for additional speaking opportunities or visiting professorships or nominate them to other leadership positions. Whereas the mentor-mentee relationship is also a closer bond where you can still do all of the sponsorship, but I think the nature of it is just that the work and the collaboration is much closer.
Great. So switching gears a little bit here, any recommendations for those who are listening in terms of challenges that are faced by mentor-mentee relationships and how would be the best way to approach this? I mean, from a mentor and mentee perspective.
So I can take that. So as a mentor, you invest a lot of time and energy into working with a mentee and helping them develop their expertise. And it's almost like an apprenticeship in the mentee then is able to help the mentor, often with working on the same studies, working on other papers, manuscripts, that sort of thing. But it's really important to realize that the mentee is not an apprentice. The mentee's goal is to basically develop their own career and thrive. And therefore, the mentor always has to keep in mind that there is the altruism goal, the goal that this person will someday be doing all of their own work and all of their own projects and may not be available to help the mentor with theirs.
That's very true, Elena. And from the mentee perspective, I can say the hard part or this challenge sometimes comes with how do you distinguish yourself from your mentor? You have worked with them on the studies like you mentioned, and then trying to figure out how to pave your path too with some of those ideas and really distinguishing yourself. And I think the mentors, that I've had, and you included, have all done that and sort of emphasized that too, that this is not the only path you can take. There are other options, and you have to sort of carve that out on your own. But it can be a challenge to sort of set that distinction sometimes.
Yeah, I keep going back to the analogy of it's like a parent and child. You
Right.
don't want your child to be home with you forever. Your child needs to be able to fly on their own at some point. But
Right.
also, you don't necessarily want to let that person go because you've
Hmm.
got so comfortable and enjoyed working with them so closely. So I do
Right.
agree with you that I think it is a relationship that requires a lot of communication.
Mhm.
And I think there are certainly situations in which things go beautifully, and there are situations in which things go not so well. But I think at the end of the day, it's important that the mentor and mentee communicate because you want this relationship to work for both.
I definitely agree. At times it is challenging for the mentor and the mentee. They fear and know that you're going to be taking your own path. But definitely it is something that it's important. It's just the way it goes. But I definitely agree that for those moments when things get challenging, communication is definitely key. And our next question is going to be for Dr. Stoffel. So, how do you maintain a growth mindset as a mentor, and how does this benefit your mentees?
So that is an excellent question. And I think the key is that in academics, one of the benefits of being in academics is that you tend to keep moving forward and having new ideas. And part of having those new ideas is being able to interact with new people and develop new directions of work. And so I do think that having mentees that are in different areas with different specialties is really exciting because if you have a team of people and everybody's come from a different discipline and everybody has different expertise, it basically moves the group forward. And so my position has always been, the more people from various disciplines, the better, because that will be even more exciting. And certainly, I always encourage the trainees and junior faculty who are working with me to actually go and explore meetings with other folks in other disciplines as well, because any additional contacts that you make just helps move all of the work forward.
I know that there are a lot of mentor mentee relationships that are long distance, like yourselves. So, any particular key points that you would like to highlight for those with long distance mentor mentee relationships?
I would say that, our professional meetings are a fantastic time to be able to kind of touch base, grab a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, and be able to talk about what's going on with you, what you need advice with, and ideas of where you want to go in the future.
I was going to say exactly that, Elena. I think some of those informal sort of times and opportunities to meet, you should reach out, you should meet up. And I recall, when I had moved and it was mid pandemic, I think peak pandemic, I remember you just sent an informal, and just a text thinking about you, how are you doing, in Indiana. So it was just really nice to know that you're being thought of or and you do think of each other at times but you may not reach out necessarily. So I think just both formally meeting but also informal contact and reaching out is certainly goes a long way too. I think those are really great opportunities. Just if you think of them, just do it, don't be shy about it. So that's what I'm learning at least.
Yeah, email and Zoom are really amazing
Yeah.
nowadays, and that you
Yep.
can fire off a clinical question in a minute,
Exactly.
and I can get back to you, hopefully
Which I
soon
do.
enough. Yeah, but I think also being
Yeah.
able to say, "Hey,
Yeah.
I've heard about this really interesting study. Do you want to be a part of it? Let's hop on a
Mhm.
Zoom." I think
Mhm.
makes things easy.
That's true. The virtual environment has only grown over the last few years, I think, for the better from that regard when you're not in the same location. So that's really helped keep us connected too.
Sounds great. When you feel a mentor mentee relationship is not working how you both expect, how would you give recommendation in terms of how best to approach this?
I would say, I think, scheduling a meeting and just coming in and explaining your position and being able to give the other person the opportunity to talk about what's working or not working for them. I think, as we've said, open communication, I think it diffuses most conflict. And I think that in a mentor-mentee relationship, I think in most situations, if things are not working, it may just be because one person doesn't know that it's not working, or else it could be that it's just completely incompatible and it might be better to kind of change the relationship. But I do think talking about it rather than stewing about it is the best way to go.
I definitely agree with that. I think sometimes it can be hard from maybe a mentee standpoint to bring that up when you're feeling it or you have a change in career plans, for example, or, things we know that the way you start may not be where you end up in a few years. So I think just being open to that and acknowledging that when it does happen, and if it feels like there's a time to, change direction or seek new mentors, go to your mentor and oftentimes they can connect you to the right folks. I think that's what's great about like academic medicine. A lot of people, Elena, like you said earlier, in other disciplines that can help guide you. So I think use that relationship that you had as a segue and launching point for perhaps forming new relationships with other mentors.
No, I agree with what you're both are saying. From mentees' standpoint, sometimes it's really difficult to kind of do this type of approach. But I definitely like what Elena mentioned in terms of open communication. And sometimes maybe the other person doesn't really know that the relationship is not working or why. So I think that definitely sitting down and both talking everything over and maybe just coming up to a decision and an agreement of whether this is something that could potentially continue to work or it's just something that it's better just to connect with someone else.
Yeah, and I think talking about it is much better than, say, just fading away or stopping answering emails or that sort of thing, because that will always build resentment and hard feelings. And I think in most situations, we all want the same thing, and just being able to have that open conversation.
I agree. And you definitely had some sort of relationship. So it's something that you want to keep.
Yep, it's an investment. You've invested time and energy, and you want everyone to succeed.
Any final words from both of you to our audience?
Jenny, do you want to talk about the JAMA article about the about the types of mentees and mentors?
Yeah, I think a lot of it starts with personality, but then also your work ethic, your work style, maybe your communication style is more important, in that role. And I think making sure you're on the same page is important and that you both see eye to eye on and have an agreement of expectations. I think that would be something that I take away from it. I think that was a great opportunity, and just knowing how you can work together currently, but then also in the future, where do you see yourself going and how can your mentor help you get there? I think just asking questions. I think sometimes we shy away, and I know I do, from asking questions or feeling like I don't know, the answers. So I think just having that kind of an opportunity is really key.
Yep, I completely agree with you. And I think that being able to take the time and kind of map out what it is that you're hoping to get and how you want to get there is really helpful, because coming with a plan, even if that plan is not completely fleshed out, is helpful rather than not having a plan at all. And yes, a mentor can help you talk through a plan, but a mentor is unlikely to be able to formulate a plan that works for you without knowing what you're interested in. And the other part about it is that none of us has a crystal ball. We don't know how things are going to work out. And having the opportunity to kind of talk about, as Jenny said, changing midstream, that's okay, and being able to have somebody who's got your back and who can think through some of these issues with you.
Thank you, Elena, for your guidance and mentorship. And thank you, Veroushka, for having us here.
I would like to thank both of you for this great discussion. I hope that it's helpful to all of our listeners. You gave some really great advice, and it's great the type of relationship that you both have. It seems to be great, and it has lasted even in the distance. So I definitely think that it's great. So Dr. Stoffel and Dr. Maratt can be reached by email for questions. We encourage you to Check out our podcast series on the CGA website, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, and stay tuned for our next podcast. Thank you.